here. Thanks for taking the time to come join us downtown and deal with parking. We really appreciate all of your time. So we have two main topics to discuss today. First is the change in the project schedule related to the budget challenges that Denver's been facing, and the second is to really get into the weeds and talk about our draft proposed strategies. So the first part, which is talking about the schedule, we have until about 4:30 to have that discussion. We've got our Director of Planning Policy, Sarah Showalter, here to help jump in with that conversation, but she'll have to take off after that. So around that point, we'll plan on switching gears to our conversation about the strategies. With that, to our agenda here. So again, as I said, we have two main items on the agenda: project scope schedule updates and strategy development discussion. So first, as far as the project schedule updates, actually, before I get into that, since it's been since August since we've all been here in the same room together, we'll do a really quick round of introductions, even though we do all have name cards here, just to kind of maybe give people a couple extra minutes to get in. But we'll start with me and then kind of go around here to staff and then do the tables kind of right to left if you're looking at the screen. So my name is Rob Haig, again, Senior City Planner with Community Planning and Development's Planning and Policy Team and Project Manager.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Childress and I'm a member of the project team.
Hi everyone, Andrew Webb, Principal City Planner here at CPD and a member of the project team.
Kyle Dalton, Regulatory Planning Manager with CPD.
Joe Green, part of the project team.
Maybe go first.
Washa Kang, recovering architect now within the Housing Authority.
Rod Kaczynski, practicing architect, and I'm also on the City Land Use Committee and Sunnyside neighborhood.
Karen Cuthbertson, fourth generation Denver native. I live in Atmore Park currently.
Mark Moore, University Hill Neighborhood Association, retired contractor.
Chia Brown, I live in the Baker neighborhood. I'm a member of PMB Denver, Denver Bicycle Lobby, Greater Denver Transit, and other urbanist groups.
Kevin Flynn, City Council, Southwest Denver. I live in Glenbrook in the Marston neighborhood.
Carson Bryant with East Colfax Community Collective. I work in the East Colfax neighborhood.
Mary Kate Zukowitz, and I live in Harvey Park South, and I'm a part of Harvey Park Community Organization, and I'm a researcher by day.
Local Curtis Park, Archer Squire, actual designer.
Jamie Torres, Denver City Council. I represent West Denver District 3. I live in the Villa Park neighborhood.
Ricardo Castaneda, I'm a community member of organizer in the Park meeting.
Lucas Hagen with the Neighborhood Development Collaborative.
Thank you all. I'll maybe pass it to Nola to introduce yourself really quick, just finish off the round.
Hi, I'm Nola Miguel with the GS Coalition, Globally Responsive Coalition and Guerra Colectiva Community Land Trust.
Awesome, perfect, great timing.
And Rob, we have a couple of people online. Guadalupe, if you want to unmute and introduce yourself.
Sure. Lupe Cantu, I'm a principal at Davis Partnership Architects, and my apologies for not being there, but recovering from an all-nighter.
Thank you. We're just turning up the sound in the room real quick, and then we also have Jay online.
Oh, there we go. Hi there, Jay Homestead, Senior Director of Preservation Advocacy for Historic Denver. And I have a cold, so I didn't want to spread that joy to you all, so I'm at home today.
Thank you. Thank you, Elisa. So we've had a couple new folks walk in. Brad, if you want to introduce yourself really quick.
Yeah, I'm Brad Yoshimitsu with Preservation of Residential South Hilltop Neighborhood Association.
And then Heather.
Hi, Heather Lafferty. I'm with Ulysses Development Group, affordable housing developer.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here, taking the time. Based on the email chain, it seems like a lot of you had time to take a look and read our materials, which we greatly appreciate. It's awesome to know that you all have some some background and already looked at things that will help us move through some of that material that we have more quickly so that we can get right to the good part, have the discussion. But with that out of the way, in order to kick off this first discussion about the project schedule updates, I'm going to pass it over to our Director of Planning and Policy, Sarah Showalter, who will give a quick introduction about kind of where we are and how we got here.
Rob, can I ask you a question first? There's a lot of other folks virtually attending. Are they advisory committee members or just public observers?
Just members of the public. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Thanks for checking in. Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Rob said, my name is Sarah Showalter. Director of Planning Policy. I'm also the interim Deputy Executive Director for CPD right now and wanted to be here this afternoon so you could hear directly from our leadership team about how important this project is and how much we're trying to prioritize it. This slide is a very kind of short condensed version of what there's a lot of information on out there right now, which is all the reasons why the city has had to make major reductions to our 2026 budget. And of course, those decisions are really difficult. There's so much great work being done by the department, and we have so many talented people here trying to be creative and think of like efficient ways to keep the work moving forward. I wanted to hear directly from department leadership that this project is a priority, and we've been working really creatively on a way to make sure that we adopt at least a huge portion of what we've all envisioned would be part of a missing middle housing solution for Denver in the coming year. I'll be very candid with you, like we could have taken an approach where we tried to keep everything that was in the initially envisioned scope. And given the fact that we have fewer staff to work on this, that would mean that we would not be having anything ready to bring forward to City Council for adoption until well after the 2027 election. And we think it's a better approach. This team actually gets a lot of credit for strategically trying to come up with a way that we can still get something meaningful adopted by the end of 2026. And I emphasize meaningful because I don't want the message to be, oh, we're just, picking a couple things that are really easy but won't really move the needle just to make sure we get them adopted by a certain time. We still want to do something that will really have a big impact and hopefully very positive impact on the city. And positive is challenging because we have to balance a lot of things. So I want to be really clear. Phase 1 does include market-based solutions. I've seen some of the emails and I think there's confusion after looking at the proposal that was emailed out around what we're proposing would be in this first phase that could be completed by the end of 2026. We are not proposing that it is only addressing new missing middle housing units that would be affordable. Rob's going to get into a lot more detail about this, but we are going to need to consider affordability and displacement impacts. That will definitely be part of phase 1, but we also want to look at opportunities to add density. So this first phase could include something as significant as doubling the amount of units you could have in every lot in Denver, as long as at least a portion of the existing residential structure is preserved. And we're making these decisions based on adoptive plan guidance we already have and what we've heard from the community. It's really clear in our adoptive plans that as we come up with more housing options, we want to consider those things, and that's why we propose to keep them in phase 1. So I'll let Rob give you more detail, but I just wanted you to hear directly from department leadership that this really is a priority for us. We have had other projects that we are going to have to just not do. This is not on that list. We want to keep this work moving forward. We think it's really important. And why I have the mic, I'll also just say thank you all, because you are dedicating so many hours of your volunteer time, and we share your passion for finding some great housing solutions for Denver. So thank you so much for being here. I'll let you share more.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So I think the first thing I wanted to touch on while I still have this slide up is, we did lose a significant amount of staff time that we can contribute toward this project. So that includes the loss of a staff member. Josh Palmieri was one of our staff team members. He was a great asset that the department lost during the round of layoffs earlier this year, and he'll no longer be a part of the team. You might have noticed him missing. But in addition to that loss of that person, the people who are still on this project are balancing more responsibilities because of other layoffs and things. So, you know, that is what contributes to the stretching out this project over the longer time period. And by having this interim stop in the middle with this phase one is how we can still get things accomplished and move the needle forward by the end of next year. Okay, so this slide gets into a little bit more detail. And so in order to make progress towards the project goals and deliver results on a faster timeline, the first phase of the Unlocking Housing Choices project in 2026 will focus on allowing additional housing units in two situations within single and 2-unit neighborhoods in Denver. This is the first part is through incentives for affordable housing. And the second is the market rate solution, which is to when the existing structure is preserved in some fashion. That's one of the things we'll talk about later today. What does that mean? Is another way that additional housing and missing middle housing units can be built on these lots where currently only 1 or 2 units can be built. The third part of this project that is really important and kind of moves alongside both of these other pieces is improving our design and building form standards in order to reduce building scale and improve design outcomes. So one of the things that does is also improve the amount of, it encourages more moderately sized buildings to be built, discourages large homes, while also ensuring that new infill development is more compatible with the physical scale of these house scale neighborhoods. So beyond that, then phase 2 would look at these strategies. We would have some time to kind of learn and see what's starting to work, figure out where any additional hurdles are. Maybe there were some things we learned towards the end of phase 1 that we weren't able to wrap in, and then build upon those strategies in phase 2. And have more options for more missing middle housing types with and without incentives and requirements. So during our first 2 meetings, we already received a lot of really good feedback about things that we should consider as part of this project. In advance of this meeting, we sent responses to some of the answers to your questions. We've been working on putting together some responses. There are some things that aren't answered in there, so we acknowledge that. We're still working. Again, we have kind of we're still trying to figure out how we're working with less staff on this project. But in order to accomplish all of these things that we need to look at, in addition to adding this housing supply, we really needed this additional time. So it's not something that we could just shrink and do with a shorter time, but we need this additional time and need both of these phases to really accomplish all of our goals. So our updated schedule is shown here. And currently we are developing recommendations and strategies, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Between now and through the end of 2026 will be the majority of our public engagement, which will occur in public meetings, surveys, meeting with you all, and also the public adoption process by the end of 2026. So our first phase enables, go into some of the details on phase 1, and then we'll have time for questions and comments and discussion. So our first phase enables additional housing in 2 main situations. First, we'll allow additional market rate housing when the existing structure is preserved. And again, we'll figure out what that means, and we'll start to talk about that in this meeting. Secondly, we will enable additional missing middle housing options when income restricted units are provided. And again, that's something where the depth of affordability, the number of units is something that we'll be continuing to work out. We have consultants on board who are helping us with our financial feasibility studies, and that will all tie into what this actually means. And then in addition to those 2 strategies, we're going to improve our building forms to ensure that new infill development is compatible with the mass and scale of existing neighborhoods. This helps encourage missing middle housing while disincentivizing large scale single family homes. So we're focusing on these strategies based on plan guidance, as Sarah mentioned earlier. Our plan guidance is very aligned in when to promote missing middle housing and often call for or typically call for encouraging affordable housing within those strategies and also the preservation of existing homes. So with that, well, we're going to take a break, and while we still have time with Sarah here too to help answer questions and see if there are any questions or comments based on the email chain. I'm sure there are some. So maybe raise your hand and we can call, and maybe someone at the table here will keep a list. Go ahead, Lucia.
I just fail to understand why this is so complicated. Why it takes a 25-person committee to upzone the city. It's ridiculous. Lakewood just did it in 4 months. Other places have done it without having to micromanage every little thing. I feel like the city operates more like an HOA than a governing body. You know, just let people build, let affordable developers build, let market rate developers build. Let people build and fill the need that there is in this housing to fill the demand. Where markets are skewed right now because we're not allowed to build the things that we want to build. And the only places that people, you know, with money, if they're coming to Denver, there's nothing available. So they're going to have to purchase houses and displace people. That's why you got to build lots of housing in some of the neighborhoods where we have been prevented from doing so. I just don't know why this is so hard and needs so much hand holding and bringing and pearl clutching and, oh, we have this displacement here and this there. You know, people are going to move. There's natural human migration. People are going to move. People want to sell their houses. People want to be able to do with what they want with their property. I think if we stop trying to control it and let the market work as the markets do work without sort of twisted incentives and coercions, I think that would solve our problem, and we wouldn't need this committee. We wouldn't have to have it in phases. Just do it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to be constructive here. Like, I certainly think that the scope for phase one is far too narrow and far too limited. And what I'm hearing is that there's not enough staff capacity to do the entire proposed scope in the timeline we originally set, right? That's what I'm gathering. And my proposal here is like, there are a lot of really smart and capable people on this committee who conceivably could supplement the work that CPD is doing in helping analyze these recommendations, right? Like I'm volunteering myself for that, you know, like there are a lot of people on this committee who I think would be willing to put in the work to advance people's understanding and to refine these policies in the timeline originally proposed. And so I get that there are staffing challenges, but like, to me, that seems like a problem that can be overcome here with who we have sitting in the room right now. And maybe like using non-staff to do this is not the most ideal approach, like maybe not, but just like there are a lot of resources here, people with a lot of experience and knowledge, like tap into that. And like, don't kick the can down the road just because you don't think you can get the work done in the time we originally set out.
Thanks, Carson. Who do we have next?
Go ahead, and then next.
Yeah, so I want to say, so this is really important project that community has been asking for many, many years. There have been attempts in the past to start this project. It was called Residential Infill Project, very unfortunate acronym that truly resulted in this attempt to rest in peace. But here we are, and like, I want to congratulate you because you assembled an amazing community. Like, there's so much passion, dedication, resources, knowledge on this committee. And I feel like we are going to fall short to our own commitment that we started with as a group and as the staff. When you brought it to us, it was going to be this robust project that really was going to address housing shortage. And like, I believe that that was a primary objective of this project, to essentially solve the problem of housing shortage by providing ways to increase supply of housing across entire city, not just in centers and corridors, but also in areas that are reached in services, access to schools. And so that's tapping into resources of our neighborhoods. And this approach is too narrow to really address the problem that we're set out to solve.
Lynn is next, and I see you back there.
Thank you. Two things. Didn't we get a grant to provide consultant support?
That's correct.
And what's their role and why are they not infilling?
We have our consultants working, they're fully on this project, helping us with our financial feasibility study, as well as helping us develop and test building forms, current and potentially new forms as well.
So is that not enough to supplement or take on the scope of the?
That's correct. We
staff
have about, $400,000 for this project. Might be oversharing. I'm getting myself in trouble here, but anyway, that is, supplements what we have as far as the staff time but it is not enough to carry us through with the full project scope within this abbreviated time or within the same time.
I think that second, I think it's going to take time. I wish it weren't taking this much time, as you know, if you read my email. But the fact is that a substantial part of the city will not support blanket upzoning of every single family parcel in the city. I know that's what some folks are hearing, but it's not what I'm hearing. In our previous meetings, we talked about being context sensitive. And so I interpreted that as meaning different approaches in different zoning contexts. I don't see how blanket upzoning can be compatible with Blueprint Denver or with adopted neighborhood plans that call for something different. So I think it's going to take that kind of work. It's not as simple as saying just upzone everything. It really isn't. It's there are places where it's completely inappropriate. For example, in areas with cul-de-sacs and no alleys, etc. It's going to require different approaches. Every neighborhood can absorb its share of growth, my district included, and it's already doing that. But to say one size fits all, that's something I'll push back on. Thank you.
Next, followed by Councilwoman Torrance.
Yeah, so one question in regards to that, is there anything that we as a committee can do to change the decision about changing the timeline and the scope and all of that? Is there room for flexibility there?
We'll have to talk with our staff members and my supervisors to figure out what we can do, but it would be a significant amount that we would need. I'm not sure that it's something that's possible.
Because I agree with Carson and I think what Coach said, that, I'd be willing myself personally, I don't want to offer other people up, but to do as much as possible to, gather community support, get voices that are usually excluded from conversation, that do not speak to council members about their housing needs. And also, to interpret what Blueprint Denver says, because I think there's a lot to be interpreted, and maybe we are a little bit like the interpreters of that, and in that what it means to have an inclusive city, right? Versus context sensitive. So if a neighborhood is exclusionary by zoning code, and that's its context, does it also make it not inclusive and so in opposition to other goals of Blueprint Denver? So and also at the same time, we could just really simplify this process and say, this is our goals. We need more housing. There's housing shortage. What are the challenges or concerns from different committee members and community members? And how can we overcome them? Because I believe we can do that. Because the need is great.
So Member Torres.
Thank you. Just, Rob, can you clarify for me what phase 2 will actually take on? Because it looked to me like both of the approaches of utilizing existing structures and then incentives were in phase 1 on the overview phased approach. So what's the difference between what we take on in phase 1 and does phase 2 just assure me that it isn't thought about in terms of reapproaching the things that were decided during phase 1? So we're relitigating like those decisions, that they're entirely separate and built upon those? Just trying to understand the differences between the two phases.
Yeah, that's a great question. And if we fully had the answers, I don't think we'd be here. And I think, it would all be at phase one. But I can say that phase two will likely include more ways to enable housing without additional incentives, right? So let's say in phase one, we allow additional units in a single unit area, an urban single unit area, but there needs to be some level of affordability. And in phase two, we might look at what changes we might need to make to make that potentially appropriate without that incentive, or potentially change that incentive. I mean, I don't know. I'm struggling because it's hard exactly to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone on our team has any better answer. I think there will be things. I think there will be things that are tweaked, right? That are in place in phase one, and they're kind of like replaced or changed with a different strategy. But a lot of what phase one does is kind of get a lot of the tools in place so that when we update whatever our strategy is in phase two, that it we don't accelerate displacement and things like that.
Okay. It just in terms of process, there's only 2 council members here. Whatever gets decided, there are probably likely text amendments that would be coming through council. Probably only text amendments, or what do we think we're looking at?
Most likely just going to be a text amendment.
Yeah.
If there's a zone map amendment, it's to like remove districts that aren't needed anymore. Things
Okay.
like that.
There are then 11 other council members that come from a variety of different perspectives when it comes to this. So what I would hate, and this is to Lucia's point, none of us love to over deliberate this stuff. But at the end of the day, I've also seen these things fail when they get to their city councils. And what we don't want to do is also have that outcome. I get Lakewood's outcome. They just did that. Lakewood's also done some really wacky stuff recently.
Yeah.
You know, like
Which is
I-
more amazing.
I
Do that every week.
I just don't like the municipal comparisons. I think we need to be this really thoughtful about how do we set up the best set of recommendations for approval, and how do we make sure that we're thinking about these things. For me, even if we're only looking at phase one, I'm still contemplating how is this differently applied and for temporary periods of time. So whether this is, I'm just throwing out what I've been thinking about in terms of displacement factors. If we did open it up, could we isolate out for a 5-year period of time that it doesn't apply to areas that were formerly redlined or areas that Nest has identified as vulnerable to displacement? Because while it may seem theoretical, I feel like it's theoretical that if you just opened it up, people would go everywhere throughout the city. I don't believe that's the case. We do have to intervene. Like, we're seeing harm happen. I don't take that just migration happens. I think people are being forced out of neighborhoods that they would prefer to stay in. And so that's what I'm going to be struggling with, along with 11 other council members who aren't in the room, about how does this apply. So whichever approach we take, what I would love to Councilman Flynn's piece is, can we look at this from, we only have about 6 neighborhood contexts, right, that we would be applying something like this to?
It's less than that. It's only 3.
It's only 3. Can we workshop it through those? Like, what would we see in urban edge? What would we see in suburban? Like, how does it actually manifest so we can really talk about it in real terms?
Yes.
Okay.
We will be doing that.
Okay.
You want to ask a clarifying question, real quick? You talked about, potentially, for example, isolating certain areas of the city. Are you suggesting that as an approach if the project were to allow more units without, preserving existing structure or income restricted units?
Well, a lot of our
Or
plans.
are you proposing that for what is currently proposed in phase 1 here?
No, it's a good question. A lot of our plans already talk about it preserving original structure.
Right.
And definitely wanting to make sure that that's happening. What I'm talking about is the times that we're allowing either a vacant lot to be developed or a demo and then something new built upon that. Though, I mean, that's where we're seeing, most of what we're talking about. I'm not talking about, I mean, District 3 is just different from other parts of the city. We don't have giant houses. We have 900 to 1,000 square foot homes. But I could see that being subdivided, like legitimately in some areas of my district. But for those, I think that why we did the West memo, like the reason behind that was trying to prevent some of that loss of existing structures that were still providing great, naturally affordable rents.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
And next up, I have Joel.
Yeah. So when I read this packet, my main fear was, for a period of years, will many housing units be produced, right? So we're here airing our various fears, right? Fears of displacement when new structures are built, fears of displacement if there's not enough housing and prices just keep getting bid up. Nobody talks about fear of displacement when a house is torn down and replaced with a house. It doesn't even have the redeeming value of having produced more units. It's just, working within the extreme constraints of our zoning and SU. That happens today. So we've all got our fears. My fears run to, we have several years where not much housing gets built because what we've done here turns out to not be all that feasible. And I think on the next slide, Rob, you've got next slide or two. Yeah, maybe it was that previous slide. Number 3 there, test feasibility as we go along. I wasn't sure if this was, when you described this verbally, it was, we know, we've heard from you, we want to do all these things. We can't do all these things right now. We want, a lot of these things feed into phase 2. Well, feasibility is vital. So let me take the 2 parts here. It might be possible for affordable housing developers to build some number of units under this that they couldn't build before because it's allowing more. But can we test the feasibility, broad strokes? We've got a lot of affordable housing experts in the room. How many units over the next 4 years or whatever the period is? I think it'd be shockingly low, but I'm not in that business. On the market rate side, or the not restricted affordable, I in these meetings keep pushing for re-legalizing subdividing of houses. So I was glad to see that here. And it could be an addition, it could be another unit on the lot, but it could be the most affordable thing you can do, which is subdivide an existing structure. But in an earlier meeting, you all said we're not going to tackle the building code issues, right? So we know that the existing subdivided houses that exist were done under a regulatory regime that was much more affordable than our current. For instance, they didn't have to put in sprinklers in every unit, etc. So we're proposing something that in practice will be largely infeasible. So my fears, I mean, I get everybody else's fears, and I think we should almost make a table of them and say, what ones are we worried about in phase 1? What ones are we like, yeah, no, that's going to be fine. My fears are we do phase 1 and several years later, it was a nothing burger. It was symbolic. I'm not here for symbolic.
Thanks, Joel. We have Rodney next, and then maybe this might be a good time to transition to some of the more focused conversations on the actual proposals in phase 1 as well. We're getting some great feedback on those proposals here, and it would be great to maybe move on to get a little bit more detail about what is being proposed there, and then have that conversation.
I think that sounds great. Nola, did you want to talk to?
I had just a clarifying question.
Perfect. So maybe Rodney and then Nola, and then as Andrew said, maybe we'll move on to the talking about strategies in our groups here.
I do want to thank everybody who has offered to help. That is wonderful, and just by showing up to these meetings and reading these materials and offering your feedback, that's very helpful, and grateful for your expertise.
Rodney. So far, it seems like we've been talking about building forms and all these different archetypes of different structures that could be built to increase density. And even the building footprints have been increased. Max
coverage has been increased. I forget what year that went through on the single family lots. I was wondering if there was sort of any discussion as to reducing the minimum lot sizes. And how, because it seems to me, like we talk about profit margins and all of that, that if, like right now, the architects have been talking about lend themselves, except for maybe duplex and row homes, lend themselves to rental properties, not properties that lead to homeownership, which is how families build wealth. Whereas if we were to look at splitting lot sizes, a single family homeowner, you know, under with the current bulk planes and all of that, if they were able to subdivide off and cut their lot in half, another smaller mass would be built on there, because you'd be, maybe we can use the same or just slightly alter the existing setbacks and building forms. And it seems to me like we still need the same amount of sewer taps, power taps for all these duplexes and fourplexes and stuff. But that type of archetype lends itself better to homeownership, which seems like the direction we're trying to go, is give people a leg up rather than rental properties, which we all know, you know, rents just go through the roof and no one can, you know, nobody can build wealth that way. So anyway, that was my thought.
Yes, we are going to do that. We'll talk about that in the third discussion.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Hey, no worries. Okay, I'm gonna try. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, I'm curious about, I have a lot of questions about what is contained in the building form and design, but it sounds like we're gonna talk about that.
Yes.
What about like a new code, creating a new code within, or overlays? I'm just kind of wondering about like openness in phase one to other types of tools entirely. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, I think we're open to it. I think that's definitely something to bring into these discussions. You know, suggestions you have to look into, because we're absolutely right now early. You'll see these ideas are kind of half baked, so we're, you know, probably go a couple different ways with them. It's a good point to kind of figure out exactly which tool we're going to use to administer these ideas that we have. So yes, I think we're kind of open to the suggestions right now. I think we were going to try to move on. And we said we were, so I think, can I take the question afterward or at a different time?
Yeah, it's about the process of the next step. Just
Sure,
if
go ahead.
it's possible for you all to do a voiceover, we haven't quite gotten that yet. Have a voiceover of the 3 different components before we dive in. That would be awesome.
A voiceover, you mean just like a,
Talk about, you know, the text that's around the current regulations and the proposed changes. If there's a particular logic that you all want to share around that, that would be great too. Just before we get our hands dirty.
yeah, I think I might be able to.
I think that's pretty much what you're about.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're good. That's our plan, so.
That's our plan, I guess. Sorry. Okay, so let's see, where are we now? Okay, so so in order to facilitate some more discussion, I'll go through my stuff right before we break out in groups. Okay, let me know if there's something else that I can elaborate on, or maybe how they interwork or something like that is what you're getting at, and happy to help clarify before we break out. But so we are going to break up into 4 groups. Well, 3 groups here, and then 1 group for the couple folks that are online. And that will allow us to kind of talk about each of these separately, and then at the end we'll all come back together and talk about kind of all 3 strategies together as a group and kind of report back, so to speak. But at the beginning, we'll provide an overview of each topic and then discuss the strategy yourselves in the breakout groups. There will be 1 staff member assigned to each group who is really just there to take notes, maybe prod some questions, or do that kind of thing. The discussion that we're really looking for here is kind of you amongst yourselves to do some brainstorming, poke holes in these ideas, what would work, what wouldn't work, what are the blind spots, all of that kind of thing. Again, staff members are here only to take notes. So again, we are building upon input that was received from community members during the planning process for our adopted plans. And Blueprint Denver the Comprehensive Plan 2040, and other adopted neighborhood plans. So these strategies that we're going to be looking at, that's where they come from. That is kind of the what we're doing, and then we are here kind of talking about the how we're going to do it. So, it's the details of what these strategies look like, and all of that sort of thing. And again, you can help us identify these blind spots, unintended consequences, even help develop some of the details of what these strategies and what would make them more effective. We did put together a SWOT analysis is what we're calling it. It's kind of like a SWOT analysis if you've ever done that before, but slightly modified for our purposes. And you don't need to think that you have to answer every question on there. It's really just to serve a purpose of kind of a guide and kind of helping you think about what feedback would be helpful for us as we look at each of these strategies. So this is what that looks like. There are copies of this on the table, I believe, or we have them here. The staff members will bring them out. I also wanted to highlight that there is another handout that appeared. This is not a city handout.
This is mine.
Okay, this is the Chia.
Yes, and this is your thing, Jamie, about when you develop in different neighborhoods. And if you upzone everywhere, you develop in a low-cost neighborhood, the cost of construction is the same, whether you develop in a low-cost or a high-cost. And the profit margins for market rate developers are going to be much higher in medium and high-cost neighborhoods. And in fact, there's a disincentive to develop in the lower-cost neighborhoods because it's a loss. So this was given to me by a developer, a missing middle developer, and the thought process that they go through when they decide where they want to purchase. Now, does that mean that nobody's gonna build in Westwood or any place like that? Probably not. But the incentives, the market incentives are not to build there. Affordable housing developers might want to build there.
It's not even what we see today.
I know, but of course you don't see that today because nobody is allowed to build where they want to build.
I mean, we get all of more
Yes.
developments.
You
In my
do because
district,
it's
when the
legal to
sheriff
do
is
so
getting-
in your neighborhood.
No, they're
It's
still coming through for rezonings too.
right, because it's legal to do so in your neighborhood and they're getting accepted. They're not getting done in Hilltop. They're not getting done in Virginia Village and East Washington Park. What you're getting is scrapes, but they're building mansions. They're getting rid of little bungalows that used to be starter homes and building mansions there. But where they want to build, where they will make more money, is in places where it's going to be easier to get it done. And it's probably maybe easier to get a rezoning in your area than it is somewhere else. Maybe there's less objections from surrounding neighborhoods. I don't know. But this was given to me by a missing middle developer, and why they want to build, in Crestmore. They want to build in Congress Park. They want to build in those neighborhoods. Not that there's anything wrong with your neighborhood, but that's where the money is.
I don't disagree with that.
All right.
Okay, all right. So, yes,
Could you go back 2 slides?
I sure can.
When I was reviewing the presentation, I looked at that image and I know that place.
Oh.
In 1954, it was a little small three bedroom house that belonged to my council aide's grandmother, Dana Montano. Her granny lived there when she married Alfred. They bought that from her in 1994. They sold it in 99 to move to Southwest Denver. They sold it for $110,000. Of course, that's what the prices were then. This was built, I think, in 2011. The duplex, the lot split, and within the last 2-3 years, each side has been sold for just south of and just north of $800,000. Every other older home on that block, that's a 900 block of Tennyson in Villa Park. Every other home on that block, on all the real estate sites that you go to, which are notoriously all over the map, but still are in the $300,000 to $400,000 range right now.
Right, and that's because our code currently allows these really large duplexes and multi-unit. So if we're able to address that, then we hope.
So I was just struck by the fact that you chose Dana's lot.
Yeah.
When she drives by there, she just cries.
The thing that I can't not notice when I look at this picture is the steps. They're so uneven.
It's going uphill.
Can I ask a question? So I still struggle with a lack of conclusion of prior discussion. We all voiced our concerns, opinions, questions, but I don't know that there is a clear consensus on the moving forward. And I also don't quite understand how you decided on narrowing the scope, because I mean, the primary objective, again, of the project was to increase the supply of housing, and I just don't see we're meeting that objective. So could you kind of help us understand that?
Sure. So maybe I'll let Andrew or Kyle speak to the kind of the conclusion as far as why, kind of where we landed. So we kind of were looking at this broad suite of potential changes that were part of this project, right? And again, it's all based on our adopted plans. So our adopted plans pretty much all speak to the importance of missing middle housing, the benefits of it compared to both on one side of single unit housing, and these are more affordable, smaller units. You split land costs. There are those benefits of cost, and then on the other side, there are benefits of missing middle housing based on the more family friendly, than a larger apartment building and things like that. So, but along with all of those benefits, the plans are very uniform and aligned in how they talk about when we undertake a project for missing middle housing, we need to focus on affordability and encourage the preservation of existing houses. So that was kind of well, let's take the guidance that in our plans is the clearest and will be these easier pieces, and the pieces that are when plans talk about it enabling missing middle, these are the pieces that kind of need to come first or need to come along with. So in order to prioritize in a way that we could sequence this and not put one part that comes before a piece that the plans call for, this is kind of how we broke it out, because there's going to be a lot of work in kind of figuring out what those solutions are, what those tools are to mitigate displacement, to stop the acceleration of displacement and increase in the cost of housing before we kind of get to the point okay, now let's address supply. So kind of took it as okay, these are the caveats that these plans put in place that are needed along with missing middle housing. And because we couldn't do them along with, we kind of decided that we should just do them.
So I think my response to it, I agree with what you're saying, and I think what you set out to do in the phase one could be an easy administrative text amendment that you can probably battle with other amendments and just push and just get it adopted. I don't think you need the brain trust that's in this room and the expertise and the passion to do what you just described. I think why we're here is to answer the difficult question, which is difficult, of increasing supply. And if we shy away from that question, then we're not doing our job.
That's a great comment. I think so. Maybe I'll let Kyle or Andrew add on if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think it's good to come up a couple times. I think it's, as Sarah said before, she had to go at 4:30. We are confident that phase one does increase supply. We're gonna take the ideas. If we can break out in small groups, we can hear from more of you. We're gonna take your ideas, test for financial feasibility, and understand the data that are being produced by our consultants that we can bring back to you. Here's what the proposals we heard from you would result in before we bring them forward. Because we agree, we don't want to waste our time for a year on something that isn't going to make a difference, right? So we'd really love to move into breakout groups so we can hear from their big group. It's really hard if we all go one at a time to get everyone's opinions. That's what we've noticed in the past few meetings. If we can dive into exactly these ideas that the team prepared to try and have some of these, this exact conversation we're having one at a time, I think we're going to be able to take those ideas and then bring them back and show you what it will do. And I just also want to, one of the things that I heard from you earlier that I want to acknowledge, as Andrew did briefly, I heard from several of you volunteering to help supplement some of the lost staff. So again, if we can get some more ideas here from a substantive conversation today, we can reach out to better understand how to involve you in producing some of that work and again engage community. There are a variety of different ways. we were gonna need you to do and we're gonna still need you to do, but we, what, we can take that back and also identify ways to involve you for that. If you're ready to tee up, let's start the breakout groups so we can dive into these details that I keep hearing folks want to start. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone ready? Here we go. Okay. So the first topic that we're going to talk about are these incentives for the preservation of existing structures. So why are we looking at this piece? The community vision. This is largely the plan guidance that we've heard, and again, the plans really talk about encouraging and focusing on the preservation of existing housing when we are implementing missing middle housing projects. What we see often is the loss of these smaller, more moderate sized houses, often what people think of as starter homes and things like that, and they're replaced with really large houses. This often is the replacement with a single unit house, but sometimes it's replacement with a duplex or other missing middle housing types. But when it's a single unit house, that increase is also very huge. It's 3,000 square feet or more on average in the city. So this is one of the issues that we're looking to solve for. Our current regulations, really this is pretty straightforward. In single unit zone districts, you can build one primary unit and one accessory unit. ADUs are allowed in all single unit zone districts now. And then within 2 unit zone districts, you can build up to 2 primary units and 1 accessory unit per primary unit on the site. And then also something that does help kind of address these affordability issues is these new homes and additions over a certain size are required to pay a linkage fee for affordable housing, and that increases once your house is over 1,600 square feet. So our proposed
Picture that the accessory dwelling unit is still owned by the primary.
That's correct.
Okay.
At the time that the permit is issued, it needs to be confirmed to have the same ownership as the house.
That specific test.
And also to you, right? So
I'll confirm. But yes, not to you.
not to you.
Thank you,
No,
Joel.
it's fine.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, so what our proposal is that there would be additional units allowed on individual sites in single unit, 2 unit zone districts when that existing primary house is retained. So with that, I think we would like to disperse our staff amongst the groups and kind of get you all to start the conversation, right? Maybe some of these things that we have been talking about here under this slide, what are some of the considerations that we still haven't figured out? What are some problems with this? Why might this work well? These sorts of things. So,
Leave the room so online folks will be.
okay. Oh yeah, I'm gonna mute the room.
I think it's the slide and Rob.
So you saw from the slide.
Yeah.
This one, so the kind of.
Yeah.
I
was just seeing if they're packaged.
Oh, she's got different ones on this.
Maybe just not.
Oh, it is a packet. Okay. It doesn't also do here, just a brief time is talking about the interesting.
All right, Jay, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Awesome. And I think we have Corey and Guadalupe in this chat as well. Or online?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Cool. So we'll be online. Hopefully the room can't hear us. It sounds like we can't hear the room. Otherwise we'll be annoying them. I'm Jill. You can see my face because the camera's very awkward, but nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you.
And let's see. Looks like maybe Corey left. Okay, cool. So then we have some members of the public listening in. Yes, I have quite a few members of the public in the room, but no comments for this meeting. So we can just kind of jump in, I think. First, also, like, I know you guys are online and it's hard to comment online, and any questions or like just comments you wanted to make that you weren't able to make about the scope and the stuff that we were talking about there.
Sure.
Yeah,
I
nothing
mean,
on my end.
working for Historic Denver, I would just say I really appreciate that the proposal sort of incentivizes or rewards retaining existing homes rather than starting from scratch. So I really appreciate trying to retain what we already have. So yeah, that's a huge step towards curbing a lot of these demolitions, is just acknowledging that. So one thing I would say in terms of the language used, maybe, I'm not really certain on this. I was going to go back to my team and sort of ask, but in terms of using the word preserving, will there be different connotations as to what that means versus using the word retaining or reusing? So just something to sort of as a side note, just to look into.
Just based on the need for historical overlay or trying to maintain the existing character? Is that what you're asking?
Well, that's what I'm like. It may create confusion if we're talking about preserving existing structures in terms of what people might assume that means versus what we're in actuality we're doing is retaining or reusing.
No, it's a good point for sure.
We see that in our plans as well. I think they all use the word preserve, but sometimes they're talking about the character of the neighborhood. Sometimes they're talking about historic structures, and sometimes they're talking about like affordability. So certainly in this case, I think we are talking about affordability or like trying to preserve structures so that we're preserving that affordability, not the historic. So I think that's helpful to hear about just how we actually say the words.
Sure.
Well, and we've always, from the architectural standpoint, it's always been keen on the fact that it's ecologically makes more sense to try to retain, as you say, existing structures and try to build anew. But I guess what I'm looking at when it comes to these proposed changes is, oftentimes we see displacement when it comes to older communities. And I'm wondering from this standpoint, what's the additive that's to this, right? Is there an opportunity in order to retain as many structures as possible and allow them to be either have additional units associated to them through an ADU or even kind of the ability to have an ADU within the home itself? Is there a tax incentive to, for instance, older communities that allow them to kind of stay in their existing homes and kind of use and make this an opportunity where it's encouraging the ability to actually create these ADUs?
Got it. So you're saying, in addition to allowing the extra unit, actually having some incentives that make it easier for people to build that unit and incentivize them to build that unit. Got it.
Right.
Cool.
I believe there are other tax incentives in other cities for like helping keep seniors in their homes and those types of things. So there are other programs out there that could sort of be modeled after, I would imagine.
No, I would agree. I know that from the most recent Prop 123, funding was pulled to a certain extent, not everything, and not knowing if there's an opportunity here where if any of those funds are slated for this type of development.
I do not know the answer to that, but that's a good question that we can ask our affordable housing folks.
Yeah, the other piece of this is, when it comes to, and this is ignorance on my end, when it comes to providing a kind of a legal unit within a home, an existing home, are you required to have, separate metering? Or is it, how is that done so that, the cost maybe potentially associated with that can be offset?
That one I'm not familiar with. I'm more familiar. I know the building code changes kick in after 3 units, but I'm not sure how the metering works for just adding an extra unit.
Right.
I know there are I guess I should say, I don't know how that works in Denver. I know there are some jurisdictions that have tried to streamline that process for ADUs and for other primary units. So that's certainly something we can look into.
Was there a reason why it just focused on just single unit and 2 unit districts rather than maybe 3 or 4 even?
So that the units that were, I guess the districts that we're looking in are the ones where you couldn't have more than that amount of units currently. So if we went up to row home or multifamily, the incentive is going to be harder to figure out because they can already have as many units as they can fit, basically. So then it'd be like an allowance in like a row home district of maybe like an apartment building form or something that gives them an ability to do more. Just that incentive changes a little bit, I guess. Yes, other thoughts or fears or worries about this strategy?
I honestly think that because of the large percentage of single, unit dwellings that exist here in Denver, that this actually requires a little bit more of a change in mindset, and the fact that you'd be adding this additional, unit, and what is that? And obviously, the biggest concern is what does that do with the parking and how is that achieved? And if there's no parking requirement, that'd be fantastic. I don't think there is, but you just never know. And so especially in kind of more of the areas around, for instance, like the botanical garden where you had to have permitted parking, how does that work in kind of inviting opportunities like this? So
sure. Like what is the effect on the existing parking?
Correct. And then I'm certainly one that believes that, it'd be great if we could become more of a walkable city. So I'm very much encouraging this. But it's just, how do you dissuade the fears of those who aren't necessarily on board yet?
Got it.
Yeah, I feel like from my neighborhood meetings when they were talking about zoning for ADUs, that was the primary concern, that suddenly our streets were going to be flooded with all these new cars. And when they actually quoted them facts on how many had been built in the last X amount of years, it's like, okay, this is not a real concern. So or it is a real concern, but it's not a real result that could be happening. So maybe just more education and having that statistical information to sort of back up that argument.
That's a great idea.
I would also, just a question around when the existing primary structure is retained, are we, what percentage of the building are we expecting to be retained?
That's a great question. And one we haven't figured out, and we'd be very open to, what are your thoughts?
I mean, at what point?
That's kind of the key, right?
There is an existing percentage with the city when it is a full demo. Full demo implies demolishing the whole building, but if it goes over a certain threshold, I can't remember what that percentage is, but that language does already exist. So maybe perhaps sort of keeping that in line with existing, like what triggers what types of demo permits.
Let me say that one more time. So you're saying if there's a full demo in the city currently, there's a percentage that.
Yeah, if I know with like historic buildings.
With historic buildings.
Yeah, if you're demolishing a certain percentage, unfortunately, like a full demo permit needs to be issued, even though the entire structure isn't necessarily getting demolished.
Okay.
So yeah, like working out sort of the details within the existing framework of the city to know what those percentages are.
Okay. That's helpful. And you're just suggesting keeping those online, basically.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think as we work towards the 2030 goals of being more and more less dependent on fossil fuels, I think some additional clarity, I think to your point, is at what point is that demo going to kick in where all of a sudden now you have to be a fully electric residence, including the ADU that you're creating, because it then puts additional load onto the utilities and to what extent, and not all of our, at least from the multifamily standpoint, right? Not all systems are quite there yet. When it comes to heating and cooling, that allows for an efficient use of electric. So so that's the part which I think that percentage of retention, it makes a lot of sense that, at what point does it kick in the need to become a more energy efficient unit?
Got it. Yeah, it seems like you're suggesting that then correct me if I'm wrong, that if we're not doing the full demo, then maybe you don't need to do that full switch over. Or are you suggesting that actually you would like to see it?
No, I would actually say it's the former. It's where you're dependent, and it's only going to be applicable to the original home that's being retained. I live in a home that was built in 1956. I would love to have the funding to actually put in insulation into the walls that do not exist, but it would come to that great expense. So if I decided to add an ADU, then is there in the future, is there going to be a requirement that I have to not only allow for the ADU to be kind of the all electric model that we're hoping for in the kind of our 2030 goals, but does it then kick in, that all of a sudden my gas boiler has to be replaced?
Got it.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, that is helpful.
So I think just providing that level of clarity,
and
so that people know what those costs are up front, would be very helpful.
Yeah, so they don't get hit with new regulations and new fees when they're doing these conversions that they weren't expecting. Exactly. And ideally, we're not requiring that. Any other thoughts about? I think we have 15 minutes to discuss this topic, and then and that might have changed depending on if we went a little bit over time earlier, so we might get pulled in early.
One question I have is under the considerations under development, could you tell me a little bit more about the second bullet point about how long will retained structure be required to remain? I mean, it sort of sounds like to me it's insinuating that structure would permanently be retained, but if there's an incentive to just build on part of a property, wait X amount of years, and then demolish the front part, then we're sort of it's not really. The long-term benefit really isn't there.
Mm-hmm. I guess, do you have thoughts on that? I mean, this is what we're doing, right? Just brainstorming what makes sense. I think, especially with the historic lens that it sounds like you have, like, do we?
1 minute.
1 minute. We have 1 minute. Do you have ideas, like, knowing about historic structures and their upkeep? Like, is there an amount of time that makes sense to you? It sounds like permanently.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the goal, is to try reuse what we have, right? Reuse existing buildings, reusing materials, that type of thing. It just seems, I mean, that's the whole point of if this piece, at least if we're trying to focus on preserving what's there, assuming that it would remain is sort of a big deal. But
okay, that's helpful. Do you have any thoughts on that, Guadalupe? Do you go by Lupe? Is that right?
Yeah, I go by Lupe. Yeah, that's
okay. Great. Do you have any thoughts on that in our last few minutes, or past few seconds?
That's a tough one, because obviously you're looking for the preservation through home ownership, right? As it transfers from one to another. So how do you write that in,
right?
To the future purchase, if you will, of that home. That's a real tough one. I mean, the only thing I can imagine is if we do that in historical overlays, where you have to kind of maintain the character of the original build, and you have so much of a percentage of change that can happen. I don't know how that can be done. But it's a great point.
That is helpful. We are getting. They will unmute the room in a minute, and we will be unmuted. So he'll present, and then we'll come back to the second topic. So. We'll just be quiet for a minute, and I'll talk to you guys in a second.
Cool.
It's 100 AMI. That's a good thing.
All right. Thanks for bearing with us. Okay, so hopefully there were some good discussions there. We're just gonna jump right into the next topic here and talk about potential development with missing middle housing with the incentives for income restricted units. So once again, similar community vision. I feel like I've touched on this in a couple different conversations, so I'll be brief. Right, so again, when our plans talk about missing middle housing, they usually focus on encouraging or focusing on affordable housing. Again, I've talked briefly about the advantages here. They're often more family friendly, often have more bedrooms in units and more for sale and for rental, kind of a better mix of those different housing types within missing middle housing types compared to apartment buildings. But for these reasons, this is something that the community has indicated that they want and need. The gaps that we're looking for or looking to solve here. So again, this enables more missing middle housing types, especially in areas that are often very homogeneous in being single family homes. There's often a lack of mix of for sale and for rental housing products. Again, for the reasons I've mentioned, these missing middle housing types do a better job of providing for that mix. Our current regulations, similar to that last slide that we looked at, right, in single unit zone districts, we only allow one primary unit and one accessory unit. 2 unit zone districts, 2 primary units and 1 accessory dwelling unit per primary unit on site. And then in row house zone districts as well, the number of units really isn't limited by a set number. It's more of kind of what can feasibly be built on a specific parcel. And the proposed change and kind of the direction that we're thinking about heading is that the additional units that are allowed on a single or 2 unit zone lot, the additional units would need to be income restricted. So things I think that we can talk about are depth of affordability, how many units can be created, how many of those units are affordable. This example on the right is just kind of a starting point. And curious on your input on kind of what would make this work, why would this work, and sort of thing.
Just a scope question.
Sure.
On the first slide for this, it sounded like introducing new building forms that are not in the zoning code today.
Yes.
In phase 1.
That's correct.
When it's affordable.
That's correct.
So cottage court, things like that, fourplex.
Right, yeah, potentially cottage court. That one's like a little bit more complicated for other reasons, but yes, we are looking at the new forms that would be allowed
in phase 1.
In phase 1.
Thank you.
As used by right, not having to go through a reason.
At this point, probably like as use by right if the affordable units are provided. So use by right.
So I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
So if you're gonna build a fourplex, 3 of them have to be affordable and 1 is market rate?
Yes.
Okay, and then my next question is, who determines, is it on the deed? Who's paying for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we can break into
I'm asking you.
conversations. I know. I'm gonna answer. Who's paying for what?
Who's paying for the affordability and the lack, if they were market rate, and you sold them at 4 market rate, who's paying for the affordable
What's
units?
our reaction to?
Who is paying
So
for
I
the
think
multi build?
It comes out of development.
So who's paying the subsidy, is it a taxpayer or is it the developer?
New development on site, so scraping or demolishing an existing structure on site would similar to more zoning. And allows.
We do affordability, we use those terms in addition to not having any profit.
So taxes.
Some of those units.
So you don't think developers, you're affordable housing developer,
Yes.
you're talking market rate.
Gia's question here.
For market rate, well, they would have to make that decision if they wanted to.
Sorry about that. They had to mute the room, but I am back. All right. Thoughts
My biggest
or
thought
questions
is,
also.
Yeah, my question is more so, I think it's great with this idea that there'd be kind of an income restriction based on kind of an AMI. It's just a question of what is now considered middle housing and what does that mean with regards to the percentage AMI? Knowing that It's certain areas are as was mentioned earlier, are tend to be a little bit more expensive to reside in. So how do you set the AMI respectfully in the areas that you're developing these options in?
It seems like you're kind of suggesting that the AMI might, like, I think generally we use like Denver's AMI to set like the affordable housing goals, and you're just suggesting that maybe those AMIs should be affordable at the neighborhood that they're being built in.
Well, and I just didn't know if that's how they would sway. If it's
Gotcha.
If you're looking at a flat AMI as it relates to, is it more like 60% AMI, or is it, for instance, if you're developing in the mountains, 100%, 120% AMI is not,
it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's still it's kind of solving for that middle income side. So I just didn't know how much sway there would be across Denver.
Got it. So I'd say generally our policies have the same AMI across the city, or it'd be like 60% of Denver's AMI, which is around like 80,000, 85,000 right now. So it'd be like 60% of that, 30% of that. Those exact numbers of where we land, the amount of units that need to be affordable, are all things that are kind of up for discussion, I think.
Right.
But that, I think, I don't know. I don't know if you actually suggested this or recommended this. Doing the AMI by neighborhood is certainly interesting to me, so I'm going to write it down.
Because it's very touchy.
It is, yeah. I'll put my name on it. How about that? Jay, you got any thoughts? You want to jump in?
I'm just thinking about sort of in preparation for this meeting today, looking at what other cities were doing, like Minneapolis.
Yeah,
has their 4D affordable housing incentive. So, landlords who keep units affordable for a certain period of time can get a property tax reduction. So maybe something like that.
Got it. That was
and then,
Minneapolis 4D? What's that?
Yeah, the 4D affordable housing incentive.
I think I've looked at that. Okay, go on.
And then Portland has their residential infill project. So this allows extra units only if they remain within house scale limits.
Yeah.
So I guess what this made me think of is when, those old mansions in Cap Hill were converted to many units within the same existing structure. So, allowing for, maybe more units within those types of structures if it's more affordable housing that they're providing. And apparently that project, it reduced demolitions overall by roughly 2/3. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's
Portland?
Portland, yeah.
Yeah. You've been actually talking to them about that project, so that's helpful.
Oh,
for that,
perfect, yeah.
For that, so like the policy we just talked about the preservation could potentially hit that same goal, I guess. So this would be slightly separate in that those would have to be deed restricted. I guess you have thoughts about how those interact at all, or?
Yeah, the complexity of that piece that I'm not really sure of.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you said you had read that this at least preservation program.
This one was just overall. It wasn't about strictly preservation.
Right.
I was just thinking there could be a link between preservation and this. And if there was a link towards incentivizing landmarking, then it would just fall under the normal landmark purview, which of course would be then on the deed. But I wasn't meaning just purely present like landmarking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just incentivizing reusing existing structures by allowing more units.
Got it.
Without ending up with the caveat, like tiny little boxes for people to live in. So
that's, yeah, I think that's my biggest concern as well, as how do you, I think this idea is the right direction, is how do you go ahead and maintain a level of livability so that you're not just providing micro housing solutions.
Yep.
Like encouraging multiple bedrooms and that sort of thing along with the policy.
That's exactly it. If you're limiting within the same area that you have, if you provide a 3-bedroom unit, do you have a greater incentive than if you did, 2 1-bedroom units, that kind of thing? Just based on how, otherwise you'll be faced with a number of just a ton of 1-bedrooms. If that, they'll just end up being probably just studios, which are great options for starter, ownership, but not necessarily something that can be, a family can grow into.
Any other just worries about this strategy or concerns, questions,
I don't,
ideas?
I mean, I think the only concern that I would have is, because right now in the SU zone districts, you have offsets from your property line that you have to maintain. That allow for sun and kind of just overall good neighborly policies. At a certain point, are you then suggesting that in order to get these number of units onto that same lot, let's say it's a 6,000 square foot lot, are you then taking away or reducing those offsets? And if you are, then how do you encourage the ability to not necessarily build a 30-foot wall right up against the boundary, but you're still allowed to have a plane to work through, right?
Yep.
I think that's probably the biggest concern that I have is that, providing these opportunities for these SU zones, how do you still maintain the character of the neighborhood while still providing these opportunities for growth?
That makes sense. So one thing, and I'm just curious what you guys think, we've seen in other jurisdictions is like Portland, I think, did this, where they have kind of FAR for area ratio. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Yeah. Okay. Where you can have
going back to the old school zoning.
Yeah, totally. They have FAR there, and they basically say you get a lower FAR if you're building a single unit, and you get some more FAR if you're going to build those extra units. In this case, that policy would look like, in addition to the deed restriction. So like, you have 0.1, I think they have 0.4 FAR for their single unit, and then all the way up to 1 FAR for if you're doing multiple units. With this discussion, that would be also, you'd need the deed restricted affordable housing with it.
If
Thoughts
they
on
can,
that?
if they can combine that, like I said, with I think what I love about the form-based zoning is that it still provides for those offsets, and it's a clear direction as to how you kind of build within a certain lot, especially in an SU lot size, right? So if you could provide that FAR with a level of clarity on how the offsets would still work and still maintain that neighborhood, I live in Virginia Village, and which is right, that also includes Crescenta Park. And so the biggest, the worst thing that you could see is when all of a sudden you have this massive pop-up that happens, and it kind of takes away from the original kind of roof line and kind of overall architectural kind of character of the neighborhood. And so how do you, and they luckily have brought in an overlay now that provides for some maintaining that level of character. So how do you do that with the neighborhood so that you can still retain that level of clear understanding of build twos? And if it's tied to an FAR as well, I think that'd be fantastic.
You want to jump in?
No, I definitely agree with that. I was just thinking, going back to that, like retaining character thing, I really do think it comes down to, the sort of form and massing. If you can keep those compatible with what's in the existing neighborhood, but there wouldn't be as much friction as maybe we've seen in other neighborhoods. So.
Yeah, I think it'd be really tough to go to zero lot line for some of these solutions and not expect that there'll be a challenge.
I guess, do you feel, knowing there's trade-offs in these things, right? If we're allowing fourplexes and getting more affordable housing, I think the great thing about mixed middle housing in general is that you can't make it fit in with the neighborhood, but just, I guess, weighing kind of character with affordability. You have thoughts on that?
I mean, I feel like that these types of things have existed in the past. I mean, I know they talked about cottage courts being sort of complicated, but I mean, there's a unit that's not far from me here on 13th, and I want to say it's like maybe Ivy or around, I or the H streets over there. I'm in East Denver over here. But it's 4 units inside what just looks like a normal house, and this was built within the last 10 years. And it actually fits in the scale of the other houses, sort of the mix of houses that you see. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, that replaced a 1-story ranch, and I feel like that's a much better use of space. But I don't know. I feel like these examples exist out there. We're overthinking it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Do you guys have like a thought on the amount of units that should be allowed if they're affordable?
I think it does come down to that FAR question.
Yeah, but how
Right.
big?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's differences in those SU zones that I think you'll need to have that FAR kind of understood to allow for a comfortable massing to
Totally.
exist.
Is that I'm kind of hearing that the number of units is not as important as what the structure is going to look like. Is that a fair assessment?
I think maybe
No.
quality of life too is kind of what you were, from what I was hearing, Lupe, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not. I mean, how much can you comfortably add to a lot that still affords somebody comfortable living? Not necessarily, and obviously sticking also within form and massing of what's already there.
Right. I think in certain zonings, with a part of that FAR is also kind of understanding how much outdoor space is available to the unit, and kind of helping with that level of definition to that point of comfort. I think is right on.
I think one of the big complaints we've just gotten as a city in the last 10 years we've had this housing boom is the size and scale of the housing that's allowed. Like you said, Lupe, I'm actually shocked to hear, Jay, that you have a house that has 4 units in it that actually fits in with the neighborhood, because that's mostly what we hear is not happening.
Yeah. I'm sure some of the neighbors would beg to differ, but as somebody who like loves this kind of thing, I'm like, yes, that, more of that.
Got it.
Yeah, I think when it's in for buildable area, if it's, now that I'm thinking through this, if the FAR is in proportion to the lot size, because when in some of these SU zones, you can have a 6,000 square foot lot, you can have an 8,500 square foot lot. It's all, it all varies.
Yeah.
But if it's based on the lot size, and I think that the ability, I think what makes Denver is having that kind of outdoor space. So there just would have to be a kind of a percentage associated to that. Then I think, developers and designers can be clever in the way they kind of work through demising walls of existing units, as well as kind of the addition of having these kind of, income restricted units added to that.
Got it. And I'll say that FAR is like not like a certainty to move forward with, just things we're seeing.
Yeah, I can't
stand
it. I hate it.
Yeah.
That calculation drives me nuts, but I get it.
And I'll say we have about 30 seconds left. So anything else you want to throw out before we get ready to jump back to the whole group? Okay, with Jay.
I think it's great. I think the kind of the AMI side of it makes complete sense, and how these would be added. So I'm all on board for that.
Cool. Okay. All right. I will mute myself and then make sure that they mute the room next time. So I'm going to go in there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Talk to you in a second.
Still on line group. All right, so we're gonna move on to our last topic, which is the building form and design updates. So in this case, I'm gonna move quickly through here again so we can have our discussion and then have time to all get back together. The summary of the community vision and what we heard from the community and what our plan guidance says is that additional housing in these residential neighborhoods, in house scale neighborhoods, to be more consistent with the scale intensity of surrounding homes. So what this really means is, and kind of what this relates to, is that new houses that we're seeing built are much larger than nearby homes. This applies to new duplexes, new single family homes. They're all really big. And the reason for that is developers know that if they max out the site, build as large as they can make more money. Current regulation currently allows for what appears to be 3-story houses. Code says 2.5 stories, but the way our codes talk about that half story, that third story, it really does appear, once you're kind of off the sidewalk right in front of the house, to be a full 3rd story. There's no incentive right now to provide any moderately sized home. And that's why we're seeing so many of these scrapes and rebuilds with much larger homes. Outside of our single unit and 2-unit zone districts, some of the issues that we see with our building forms that we're looking at tackling here, kind of a separate category potentially, are issues with the limitations on row house development, really just being side-by-side dwelling units. This kind of limits the amount of stacked flats we could have. We could potentially have a lot more flexibility in kind of the unit configuration within our row house zone districts. So our current zone districts, again, allow all these things, 30 to 35 foot maximum height based on lot width, 2.5 story height, has this bulk plane that's used to guide the size of structures on lots, which from what we've heard and what we've seen is not the most effective tool in these house scale neighborhoods. Bulk planes are effective in a lot of places, but within these scales, it often doesn't result in the outcomes that we're looking for. And we have a really large maximum lot coverage of 45%. So what we're proposing is several or quite a few changes. Again, they're not really detailed here, but what from you we'd like to hear kind of other ideas that you have about potential changes. We are looking at considerations that reduce the maximum height, allowing a 3rd story potentially only under a pitched roof. This is something that the zoning code used to require. That 3rd story was under a pitched roof. It really helps things be more house scale. Reduce potential lot coverage allowances. And then this one's really important, is developing the sliding scale to increase development potential as the number of units increases. So this example down here in the bottom right is based on a floor area ratio compared to the amount of area you get in your house, your floor area compared to the lot size. And other cities, Portland, Sacramento, to name just 2, have seen really good uptake in this. And it kind of changes the way developers think about developing on properties and help home builders think about things. It's rather than the biggest house I can build, it's how many units can I build? I want to build the most units rather than I want to build the most house. So these are some of the things that we're thinking, and love to hear some of your input on ideas here that are good, where you've seen them, and what else we should be thinking about, and what here won't work. So thanks. And then we'll come back together and kind of do a recap.
So we just did.
Harvey Park, we built 2 points.
All right, success. So any initial, we talked about this some already in our last.
We did, yeah.
But anything in here, I guess, jump out to you as something you really want to see? Or is there anything missing in these kind of development standards listed here that you'd like to see?
I like the idea of bringing back that pitch roof idea. That does seem, as he was saying, to help make it feel more human scale, more house scale. My computer's about to die, so I'm going to run and grab my charger.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think having some level of attention to a kind of a datum plane set after the 2nd story, and then from there it's a roof element, whether it's what we see here and this kind of gabled roof, or, you know, is it single sloped? I think those offer flexibility to developers to do something varied and interesting. So it's just not all, you know, a monolithic mass of 3-story pitched roofs that
Sure.
all look the same. So I think there's opportunity there for sure. Obviously, the FAR side of it, I think, addresses it. I get a little worried for the duplex example, where all of a sudden you're pushing to the side of your property lines as closely as you are.
Yeah.
But I think the looking at the justification of the triplex, I think, is a really interesting idea.
With the, I'm sorry, there's a vacuum coming, so I don't
That's
know if
okay.
you can hear that yet, but you might in a second. If
Not yet.
the duplexes shared the same setbacks that is currently, basically duplexes and single unit dwellings right now have the exact same development standards in our code, the form. It's just one is allowed that 2 units. Do you feel like those setbacks would need to be adjusted if the duplex form came in, or do you think the standards that currently exist?
I think I'm looking at it from the standpoint of maybe limiting the FAR, just kind of seeing
Okay.
how, you know, the duplex is all about how you orient the site, and I think
Sure.
there's flexibility there. So I think if you provide a compromise on the amount that you can of the setback, so that you get a little bit more distance between that and your neighbor, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially in these SU neighborhoods. The fourplex, to be honest with you, is a bit scary in the way that it's massing to kind of this example. So
Yeah.
if, you know, how do you go about doing a fourplex where maybe you have a more opportunity to kind of push towards the rear of a property to give
I'll
you
say
that
with-
greater opportunity?
I think potentially if it's on a corner, there could be maybe exceptions
Yeah.
depending on where what kind of lot.
Great idea.
I like that, so the vacuum's awful close. I'll also say that these renderings are, for the fourplex in particular, is, I'm pretty sure these renderings are them, but that's our, the form currently allowed in our single unit district. Is like what you can do with a single house right now. That's one of the issues that we see in our code.
Not exactly, because you have a bulk plane that starts after 10 feet from the setback on the side, right? So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you're going to ask for that variance to get that second story as close as you are to that property line. So that's the part which is in accepting this beyond the single dwelling, you're obviously working towards that variance. So it's how do you work a comfortable amount of compromise without pushing all the way to the property extents?
So that example that I was talking about is right at 13th and Jersey Street. And that one also does utilize a gabled roof for that 3rd story with just dormers. So yeah, it actually looks kind of similar to the rendering here.
But it's also in that corner lot, it looks like, right?
Yep, it's on a corner lot.
Yeah. I think if you can, depending on how the FAR, maybe those larger FARs, you know, the one FAR is maybe provided, you know, it's or there's a limitation to it as it relates to maybe the size of the lot, or as you mentioned, the orientation of the lot if it's a corner lot. So yeah, it looks like you have looks like that mid-block break to allow for a building entry in the middle of the elevation there.
Yeah, it breaks up the massing a little bit.
It does, yeah. That's nice. And it also steps down towards the
Yep.
alley, which is nice.
Yep.
So for, I guess, after this topic, we'll have honestly not very much time to report back. And if one of y'all would like to do the report back, that works. But I thought maybe it'd be nice to have just a couple minutes to discuss. Go ahead, Jay. Did you want to?
Oh, I was going to say, if you want to report back for us, that might be the most efficient thing.
Yeah,
sounds
I would
good.
agree.
What are the big things from this group that you guys feel like you want to make sure everybody else sees?
I
Sounds
mean,
like
I
the
think,
corner lots was important in this
yeah,
design.
I think what Jay picked up on is, you know, there's greater opportunity for these larger, you know, fourplex and possibly triplex when they're associated to either corner lots or, you know, even if they're, when you have a larger, you know, lot size. So maybe there's kind of just a limitation of what that, how far that FAR goes on, you know, a 6,000 square foot lot versus an 8,500 square foot lot.
Got it. Anything else on this topic?
No, that sounds good to me.
And then for the affordable housing topic, for income restricted, the things I thought I heard that jumped out. Where number of units isn't as important as the livability and just kind of form and size of the unit. That's like the main thing that we want to make sure is fitting in with the neighborhood. Does that sound right to y'all?
Yeah, I think that I'm aligned with that for sure.
Yep.
It's funny, there's a duplex just north of that example.
Yeah, I
the
saw
standing
that.
seam. And it's like all of a sudden you see the justification of, you know, that larger, you know, 2-story, even with the kind of sloped roof and how it fits within the neighborhood, and it's pretty tough on that property line.
Yep.
Anything else on the affordability piece that you want to highlight?
I'm supportive of the AMI for sure, and kind of providing that level of incentive.
Yeah, looking at different property tax incentives.
Okay. And the preservation piece.
From
And I
the
def-
multi, sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
Oh no, that you can go ahead.
So I do have one question on from the
Mhm.
multifamily side. You know, the AHART team has been pretty awesome and kind of helping developers push through multifamily housing in an efficient way through the entitlement effort. Is there an opportunity that you foresee here that, for instance, if it's from the AMI side, if it has some affordability, that it would also kind of get an expedited review, and because you know how things kind of get held up a little bit from the review
Sure.
side.
There could be, so right now the Earhart team only works on projects that are 100% affordable deed restricted
Mhm.
housing. So I'm not sure, it's certainly an opportunity if we had projects that were within this kind of scale, I guess, of
Mhm.
whatever we end up, that they could be a part of that. We haven't talked to them about it yet, so
Sure.
I'll write
just-
it down as an idea. How about that?
Well, just looking at it from the idea of speed to market,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is gonna
yeah.
Be, you know, to Jay's point of education, if there's
Yeah.
also, and here's the incentive, you're not,
Yeah.
you know, a year in
Totally.
entitlement and you know, permitting.
Yeah, and maybe it's not the Earhart team. Maybe it's just other ways we can speed
Pick
up the
some
process
version
for
of it.
folks. Yeah,
Yep, exactly.
love it. All right, let's see. Not use the word preserve. That was big, and
But just be mindful of the way in which
Yeah.
we're using it.
got it. We have 1 minute. And what else came up there?
I applaud the concept of trying to reuse what's already there. That's trying to find ways to do that. Not everything needs to stick around, but if we can try use existing structures, please do.
I'm remembering now to the kind of sticking point of how long it needs to stay there is something that a long time would be ideal.
Yeah, maybe just not even introducing it would be something, because otherwise then you're introducing the idea that, okay, well, in 2 years I can demolish the property or the structure at the front of the property and keep the back.
Well, and how do you prevent somebody from developing this, taking some level of incentive as they develop this, and then selling it in a year's time and just flipping it to market rate, right? So that's where, you know, how do you make sure that in the sale of these properties, that you retain that level of affordability.
All right, I'm being told to wrap it up, so.
Cool.
I
All right,
will-
well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys. I will, hopefully, I'm sure I'll see you at the next one.
Okay.
All right. And you'll see me on here summarizing in a minute, so.
Perfect.
Give us all your creative advice.
How are you gonna take it? You have it all in here?
I have like the summarized notes up there, but no, I wasn't taking specific stuff. But I'm sure it's in the back. We will send a recap and you can make sure I'm not missing out. And I trust that you will be on time. All right, we were gonna do a report out, but with the kind of longer discussion that happened at the beginning of the meeting, we are gonna forego that. What we will do, we'll put together a summary and we will send it out to you all within probably a week from today. And with that, then you can let us know if we've missed anything, other things to highlight it. And that's the way we'll kind of document the conversations that we had here. Again, really appreciate all of your time coming out here today. The next steps, want to highlight, our next meeting is not very long. It's November 12th, so it's in about 3 weeks. We will have a similar meeting as far as we're going to kind of build on these discussions. Try to have it mostly focused on working towards solutions. Again, we'll kind of look at what we have, what we heard from you, take some next steps, potentially add some details on things. Additionally, our community public meetings will start in the first half of 2026. We also, for the council members in the room and those who are also interested, have a joint city council and planning board meeting in early December. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time.
So can we start phase 2 next month?
We'll start. Soon as
Sounds
possible.
good. Feels like we're done with phase 1, right?
All right. Well, thank you very much. Staff's gonna be hanging around and closing out, so feel free to hang around and bond. But have a great afternoon.
Reasonable.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, like Robin. Scott.
Perfect for, like, Queen City has one in Capitol People's Mansion. You know the People's Mansion that was bought right over there?
I actually do the fun one.
Yeah. So is the recount?
Incentives they're allowing.
Yeah, I had this idea of making it exactly what they were talking about. I would say even the science fiction, never happened. I was reading more down where it's like grocery store needs X number of. So she started. Yeah, like, and so I was like, all right, we should look at the city and say, how many people are walkable grocery stores? And like I suppose, same thing was talking about all these different things, like different stores, different.
Conspiracy.
Just make it real. And like transaction household. Kind of thing. Like sunshine, so it's like, here's our area is not successful, like our neighborhoods aren't dense enough to like, because the minimum's like 9. And so we should, keeps talking about backing up. That's huge. Look at how we get our neighborhood.
How will we become rich? So they did.
Densities that need all those.
The thing I
Dividing among the evil.
I see. Force people to start.
Jewish.
Yeah.
So you guys moved to Denver.
Actually, like, laying out. Oh, okay. It's that, Sunny side.
Let's understand why people.
Federal to Zoom. My street play is like right in the middle. It's like a quarter mile federal, quarter mile Zuni, and Zuni used to be kind of a still has it. Federal is first.
So you gotta watch out. So they
All those went away. They do. You know, watch out for the guys.
evil calls.
They had to have.
They would get enough stores and they could stay in business, and then the insides of those could stay same family. That's right this time, right? Yeah, you did. So I've always thought about just upsizing town to be take those ideas I have, getting in my organization. Thank you. But thank you for that. Family first going back. There's still involved in that. It's very non-thing. Like allows that to be and so you can explain about that and think there are a lot of don't want any change. So yeah, like we should talk about like square foot house. Never gonna be happening. It's not the same neighborhood. It's nice to meet you in person. Yeah.
I work in health and there, so.
Well, that's exactly what this is trying to stop, right? I am in the same, I still think split minimum lot size. I am reducing the minimum lot size. But I like Gosha's idea, it's like, I think that goes in tandem with that second incentive. Increasing the allowable square footage on the line. With both.
I'm sure.
It's totally. Yeah. That's stuck in it. With multiple units fits in with those sketches that you did with those. I think it would encourage developers that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, internet side, we can see how we're going to tolerate that.
Right.
Right.
They should have said it to There's pre-application phase, yeah, and I remember I was talking about that, maybe, or maybe, most of our pre-application programs has those aspects. So that's like a free service that we offer. It's like a basic we tell folks there is. Unless you mentioned, I have some stuff.
Yeah, I feel like here's this proclamation. The other proclamations. Not totally. Like, but also have the online.
Yeah. I think they may see it as more.
Well, that's not true.
And like I said, most of them from us that no, it's actually not possible. So, and I would love to.
So yes. Sure.
Yeah.
I know.
So was there? Right.
And I said.
Yeah.
Halfway house. You know, I mean, and that's. One.
I know that one year.
Here.
And figuring out how things go. Oh, okay, I know where that is, yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Just take care of it.
Yep.
Actually, I can. I can build.
I don't find out if it was actually.
If you said it was 120 AMI, well, it's gonna be yours. But yeah.
I think what you were saying, doing the parcel, you're saying that's what the use you make.
I overheard you say where it was on. Yeah. Send me an email about it, and I'll see what I can find out. Yeah, it's all face to an A. Yeah. Thank you.
My name. Like three new permissions, and I'll like fill them up. Yeah, to me,
Market studies would lower.
What are you talking about?
You know what? I'm still I do this, instead of. Why is going to change?
If there are.
I can check.
Or the other.
Sounds like you're familiar with this.
Yeah, exactly. Once COVID hit,
I was gonna get.
It was absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. How did your experience?
Things we discussed.
Yes.
I have good enough.
Great, same.
So also. Yeah, that's fine. I had asked.
Well, it's nice for me to be worried. We discussed it as a group about takeaways. So now we have some takeaways. I only had. I only had two. So. Filler too,
I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna leave this to you, Andrew.
I'll take care of it. Areas there.
All right. Would you like some candy?
That's the compromise
Pretty
the
good.
city council struck. It's been a few years now, but I haven't heard of these. I understand. So, yeah, you know, there's some both sides wish that it was more flexible.
Right, the people that are making, you're right, the ones that are making far away.
As far as I know, that's.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.
We hide it.
Thank you so much for your assistance.
Anyway, I appreciate it. Yes, sir. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and downstairs. Yeah, I said your discussion was good. That sounded like Joe's was. Tons of notes.
Yeah.